All right, what is up? We're back for another Money Morning. What is up, Andrew?
Hey, good morning. Good morning.
Welcome. So, we have a housing question for today's show. It's medium in length, so let's just dive right into it because he's a fellow Canadian from Hamilton that has, I guess, some money housing issues and problems and looking for some feedback. So, I think this is a good platform to do it on. Um, I'm not going to mention his name. Love your content. Housing question for you about me. 30-year-old male, single, no kids, owns a house in Hamilton. Mortgage remaining is 500,000. Credit card debt is 80,000. House value is 650,000. What's the LTV on that? Let's just get that first.
It's close to 83.
But let's see how your math is, buddy boy. 76.9.
Well, I wasn't far off.
Close but no cigar. Okay, so 76.9%. Loan to value is measured when you divide the mortgage balance into the value of the property, by the way. Banks usually only lend, or not banks, lenders will usually go up to about 85% loan to value maximum, sometimes a little bit higher depending on the environment and the location, but that's usually max, and that's not always banks. Banks usually stop around 75, depending on your credit, 75%. So you have to sometimes borrow from a private lender, second mortgage, stuff like that. But anyway, we'll set that aside. So he's 76% loan to value. Job used to pay, lost job in 2021 for refusal to take the jab. Job used to pay 80,000 a year, no cash or other major assets. Everything is in the house for work. I've done law enforcement or general labor related jobs, nothing remote as of yet. So he used to be a cop, sounds like.
Yeah.
And hat tip for standing up for what you believe in too. So let's just state that, or I'll state it anyway from my perspective. Should I continue to rack up debt in my house, or should I swallow my pride and sell? Quick backstory: once I left my job, I rolled the dice and took the risk, went all in on a house flip project. Long story short, didn't work out. Lost approximately 50,000. Project lasted from Feb 2022 to March, so almost a year. Lots went wrong and I got burned. Interest rates skyrocketed. House prices went down 20%. Project delays 6 months to sell. It infuriates me to no end that all my time and money was wasted. Had experience renovating primary residence. Wasn't a random idea to try to flip. So he's done this before successfully, but he just had bad timing in the market. And that's true of house flippers. I mean, actually, Andrew and I know a few. One of them that you actually used to work for us, who has seen the market go up and down. So it's not always the best route or path to wealth unless you really know what you're doing. You've got yourself hedged with a lot of properties and doors that pay rent. Anyway, I've been applying to T4 jobs again since the project finished in October 2022. 8 months later, only 4 interviews, still no job, applying to jobs. I'm actually surprised the police department hasn't allowed him back in, given that it's like proven that this thing was neither safe nor effective. But anyway, that's an aside. Still no job. Applying with basic 70 to 100K salaries. I have access to over 100,000 in credit, and I've been borrowing from these products to pay the mortgage and other bills. My current expenses are 5,000 a month with no income coming in. What's your opinion? Should I sell now and walk away with $20,000 to $30,000 in cash, assuming $650,000 house sale, after all debt is paid, including realtor and lawyer fees? Or should I continue to roll the dice, applying for jobs until I finally get one again while incurring more debt? I believe entrepreneurship is a way long-term, but my first attempt at it netted a $50,000 loss. Looking for a predictable income for the next few years until I recover. The only reason I have not sold yet is I spent my entire 20s working towards buying a detached property here in Ontario. And now, because of the world went crazy during the beer bug, I may have to sell and rent all over again over a jab. It is what it is, but I'm hanging on. The issue is leaving my pride and ego behind. As crazy as it sounds, I would do it all over again, as my health, both short and long term, is more important to me than any amount of money or a job. Feel free to use. Okay. So where do you want to go, man? What do you want to start with?
Well, he's certainly in a predicament, isn't he? I'm an advocate of believing that property ownership is important. And as I just saw an article yesterday or the day before, property values in the Greater Toronto area have gone up 24 or 25% year on year from May 2022 to May 2023.
Mhm.
So it looks like properties are increasing again in terms of value. So if he was to sell the house, it would be difficult for him to get back into one later if the properties continue to climb in value. So at this point, I would suggest he just continues to bite the bullet and take care of the high living expenses he has with no income, which he said was $5,000 per month, and hope that in the very near future he gets himself a job so he can cover the living expenses from the income, and then just continue to roll out the property ownership. I don't think it would be a good idea to sell at this point because properties are going up in value, unless that's his only ultimatum or alternative, and he's got to sell the property. At least the market seems to be a little hotter today than it was a year ago. So I think he might be able to get some value out of the house if he did sell it.
So I think that's reasonable advice. So let's say, so he's got about another 9% LTV in the property, right?
To liquidate, yeah. If he said he was at 76.
So he could technically borrow another $58,000 against the house, do an interest-only mortgage, right?
He could. Payments would add to his $5,000 expenditures that he's got currently, which will make things tough, unless he's using that money to take care of the debt that he's got, where he's probably paying over $1,000 in minimum payments.
So interest-only payments for a year would be $8,694 divided by 12 months, basically $724 a month. He could actually probably build it right into the mortgage. Instead of borrowing $58,000, he could borrow $50,000 and prepay the mortgage for a year. That's what I would do. So to sort of explain that again in layman's terms, because his loan to value is 76% right now, he could technically go to a private mortgage lender, borrow another $58,000, because the difference between 85% and 76.9% on $650,000 works out to $58,000. And I mean, he can make the monthly payments if he wanted to, which would be interest only at $724 a month. Usually second mortgages on these types of properties would be about 14.99%, which is, yes, it's high, but it's a lot lower than credit card interest rates, way lower than credit card interest rates, in fact. Which will be anywhere from 19, 20, 21, maybe up to 28%, depending on what product you're using. But the total cost for that for another year to sort of get himself sorted out with a job would be about $724 a month. So that would be what I would do in a situation like that. Because I think you're right. I think the way the housing market is going, and I saw a bit, and I'd recommend, if you're living in Ontario, follow a YouTube channel called Rockstar Real Estate. I met these guys a number of years ago, a decade ago. They're real tuned into the real estate market. Hamilton's a market that they like a lot. And, they're always talking about what's happening, what's on the horizon, leading indicators, stuff like that. There's a lot of cranes up in Toronto. There's a lot going on in the city, and there's still loads of immigration still. So I don't see these prices coming down. So like you said, I mean, if you want to be in the housing market, which seems to be his priority, probably want to stay in it rather than exiting, paying your real estate fees, moving all your shit. Like getting a job, a job, it's like you can get them. They do exist out there. I'm really surprised the police department would not take him back after the screw up of trying to cram these experimental jobs in everybody's throat. I know a lot of people that quit or were laid off that were subsequently rehired back. In some cases, there's class action lawsuits. I know pilots that refused it, that have a class action lawsuit going on, and they're employed. They're now re-employed by their employer. So I wonder if you've considered that avenue as well. Is there a way to leverage this with some muscle with a lawyer? Because there's got to be something going on there from that regard. If it's an unlawful dismissal or an unjust dismissal, investigate that as well. That's what I would do. Do you have anything else?
Might not be the police force, to be honest with you. He said his income was around 80. That seems to be on the lower end of the pay scale, unless he's a recent graduate of the police academy.
Yeah, it could have been a security guard for the Pearson Airport or something like that too. Yeah, you're right.
I know that the TTC, and I don't mean to name drop, but the TTC being a unionized business, they had the same issue with the vaccinated jab. They advised all their employees that they had to mandate the requirement to take it by a specific deadline, and those that did not take it by that deadline would be terminated. They followed through with that, and then I understand that they reversed that decision shortly thereafter. So that's just an example of one business entity requiring you to take it and then reversing the decision after the fact and rehiring those employees that they let go. So there's that possibility, like you said, that maybe whoever he was working for has changed their position on it. Maybe he hasn't spoken to them since, but there's no issue reaching out back to them and speaking to your manager or your ex-manager and seeing if there's an opening for you. If you were a good employee and their position has changed, there's no reason why they might not take you back. But he's still a young individual, seems to be healthy. Being unemployed for over a year is somewhat unusual. So there are jobs out there, like he said, that he can avail himself of and get a job short term. If he's got absolutely no revenue at all right now, because like just assume that employment insurance has discontinued, he's maximized his 52-week allotment, and he's got nothing coming in. Well, there are jobs out there that will pay you $30,000 to $60,000, and I'm sure he can get one of those for the short term to at least get some revenues in and not use credit at the full $5,000 mark for his expenses every month, like he is indicating he's doing.
How much credit does he have left again? I think he said 70, 80,000.
He has access to 100.
Yeah, it says 100,000 in credit, but I think he said he's only got 80,000 left somewhere. So let's call it 100,000. You could borrow against all of that.
He can borrow against his unsecured credit products. He can borrow against the house if he needed to.
I mean, he could make himself judgment proof, right? Like he could borrow all against that and, keep going, but make himself judgment proof by maxing out the mortgage. I can't see a young, healthy guy like this being out of a job for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And guys, like, this is why I've stressed on the channel before, not so much on this one, but on the other ones. I mean, if you're an employee and you work for one of these conglomerates, I'm just going to call them conglomerates collectively because that's how they operate. Government says jump, and then they're like, well, how high? It's like a lot of people were forced to do things that they didn't want to do because they had the fear of not being able to provide for their family. I mean, this guy didn't have a family, that doesn't sound like, but there's a lot of people that I know that like message me, is like, Rich, what do? I'm healthy. I don't need this. I don't believe that I need this, but they're forcing me to take it. And if I don't take it, then I lose my job and I have a family to provide for and a house and a mortgage and all this stuff. Like, what do I do? It's like you're backed up against a wall in a scenario like that. And this is where things are going, guys, when it comes to jobs. A lot of the times, job is an acronym for just over broke, and they control you. And this is why I believe for a lot of people, entrepreneurship should be considered. That's a totally different cast. And I talk about that more on my Entrepreneurs and Cars channel and courses that I offer. But be very, very vigilant in your life and do not put yourself in a scenario where you live paycheck to paycheck, where you're put into a corner and forced to contemplate something like this that can create a scenario like this. It's unfortunate, but doing the right thing as you believe, I'm with you, but look what it's created, as a result of government intervention in what is essentially, or what turned out, essentially to be no more dangerous than the common cold. Anyway, leaning into some areas there that go down rabbit holes, but any final thoughts on this one, Andrew? Is a guy like this suitable for a debt settlement plan? I guess it's a question I should ask since it's relevant.
Without an income, it's going to be virtually impossible for him to sustain the requirements of the program, because there's obviously a payment he needs to make to get out of debt. And if he doesn't have an income, that's going to be impossible. My advice to him, just to remind him if he's watching the video, is that he should,
well, I have to send him a copy.
Yeah, so I would suggest he retains the house, keeps it, looks for a job, mitigate his loss in terms of income. So find any job you can get that pays him between 30 and 50 or 60,000 just for the short term. So he's got a revenue source that comes in to help. And just eventually get the higher paying job down the road, speak to his ex-employer, see if he can get back in that door or any other door that is similar to what he was doing previously. But the market is going up. So I don't suggest that he sells the house right now, because he may regret it. If he sells the house now for $650, in a year that might now be worth $725 or $750, and he's now scrambling trying to find another $75,000 plus to buy into the same type of property he previously owned. So I would say,
yeah. So I co-sign that, and just to add to it, I would find out if there's a law firm or somebody that's launched a class action lawsuit for other people like you in a similar scenario. I would imagine there's probably several others. If it's a unionized gig, if there's a potential, like I said, I know airline pilots are in a position right now where they're suing their employer and they're actually still flying for their employer. because of what they did. So see what options exist there beyond what advice you've just been given. We wish you the best of luck with that. If you are a Canadian or even an expat Canadian that lives elsewhere that has unsecured credit card debt amounting to more than $15,000, you can learn how to legally reduce it by 50 to 70% and get debt free in less than 4 years. All you have to do is go to totaldebtfreedom.ca, fill out the form, get yourself a quote, and take some steps forward. Usually the best indicator, people are always like, well, how do I know that I need this? It's like, well, look, if what you're doing isn't getting you out of debt and you're basically treading water and 6-12 months have gone by and you basically owe the same amount of debt, it's time to do something different. And the debt settlement program is one that works the best, in my opinion, for most people. Andrew, thanks for hopping in and helping me chop this up. We'll be back again soon. We don't do these every single Saturday, guys, by the way, but if you're subscribed to the channel with the notification bell hit, you'll be notified when we do them. And if you watch them after the fact and it's a recording, just leave a like and a comment below for the algorithms. But we'll be around. We'll be back again soon. Thanks, guys.
All right.